Hello everyone, my name is Chris Jameson. This presentation is going to be on the movie Crimson Tide and the conflicts involved throughout the movie. I'll start with an overview of the movie and then move into different leadership styles of the two main characters from the film. After this, I'll go over some of the conflicts that arise and details to the main conflict. In the end of the presentation, I'll go over the negotiation tactics used by each individual that conclude the movie. Crimson Tide is a movie about a U.S. submarine set on a mission to Russia through the Pacific Ocean to help eliminate or prevent any nuclear threat. Captain Ramsey, the main character, seeks for a new commanding officer, which comes to Comrade Hunter. Ramsey and Hunter are very different leaders and have different leadership styles and views with ethics. Ramsey is a much more traditional Navy man, where Hunter is a much more reasonable and logical person. The crew experiences an encounter with an enemy submarine and goes under attack. A transmitted message is cut off in the attack, and Ramsey makes a decision to launch a nuclear attack on Russia. Hunter disagrees with the decision because it could not be authenticated to confirm what Homeland Security was trying to relay. This leads to anger and frustration, disorganization, and a confused crew. While Hunter takes over the ship, further issues arise with attacks. He has to make a difficult decision to save the crew at the sacrifice of 2 men's lives. Ramsey retakes the ship back with threat of bodily harm. During this time, a technician was able to recover the message that was incomplete to find that Hunter was correct in not launching the missile. I'll discuss some of the leadership styles between Ramsey and Hunter, as well as the conflicts encountered between the two and the strategies used in the negotiation process. Moving into the leadership styles. Ramsey is the captain of the submarine and has a very distinct leadership style. He is an older gentleman and fits the profile of stern and stubborn. What he believes is correct, and he'll listen to others, but generally does not allow them to influence his thoughts. He is in a position of power, that being a captain of a submarine, which also means he is in control of nuclear attacks and the crew on board. Ramsey says during the film that the 3 most powerful men in the world are the President of the United States, the President of Russia, and then himself, who is the holder of nuclear missile attacks. He uses this to his advantage in a few instances to display that he is the leader. His goal is to complete and accomplish a mission or to be very task-oriented. This also helps with making decisions quickly that are off track or unscheduled. Being in the Navy, you can also see that he believes in fulfilling the punishment with others' crimes. At the beginning of the film, he jokes about making sure the crew knew what to do, and that if you didn't do your job, you were going to be in trouble. Commander Hunter, on the other hand, is the ex-submarine, a longtime partner of Ramsey who was unable to attend the mission because of medical causes. Hunter is a family man and an educated person from Harvard. He is a much more personable person with the crew and values their opinions. He looks to build their relationships with them. Hunter also empowers his peers to make decisions and be accountable for them. He spoke with a supervisor after an incident and explained that the duty of the supervisor is no different than that of his own. If you make yourself an example, you have to live up to it and fit your role. If he did not continue to cooperate, Hunter would report the incidences with the other crew members and the supervisor. Hunter likes to make the right decision and not guess. This is the primary conflict of the movie because he analyzes both sides, trying to make reason for confirming the message. He is a very constructive leader and looks to better himself and those around him. He also does not disagree with the reasoning, but disagrees with the execution. When he's speaking with Ramsey, he does this in a very respectful way without raising his voice. Moving on to the conflicts of Crimson Tide. A fire breaks out in the kitchen, and Ramsey uses this as an opportunity to run a nuclear launch drill. Hunter disagrees with the decision because the fire could have broke out again. Ramsey's reasoning behind this was that war does not wait for opportune moments, and it's times like this that we need to see what the crew is capable of doing during chaos. Hunter agrees with this reasoning, but still does not agree that the drill should have been run at the risk of the crew. When Hunter questions this, he does it in front of all the other officers, which questions the captain's authority. Ramsey did not appreciate this, and when they were alone, he made sure that this was not going to happen again. The fire did result in the death of a man, which Ramsey says to Hunter, it was not because of the fire, but because of the man's weight. This is conflict number 1, where Hunter sees that the captain is unwilling to accept the death of a sailor at the expense of his fault and places the blame on the sailor himself. Conflict number 2, which is the primary conflict of the film. This is when the submarine is under attack and a transmission is cut off during the attack. This transmission does not allow the authentication of a missile launch to be complete. Ramsey is put into a difficult position and acts on instinct of war to save millions of lives by eliminating a threat. Hunter states the decision is wrong and that under naval code, nuclear launch can only be done under agreement between captain and commander, along with the confirmed authentication of a Homeland Security. Hunter used factual and logical reasoning to Ramsey's instinctual decision. Conflict number 3 is when Hunter assumes position of the captain. Mutiny takes place and Hunter takes over captain of the submarine. During this time, another attack with enemy torpedoes causes loss of control. The submarine begins to sink, enclosing in a threshold depth of pressure. 2 men are at the bottom of the submarine in an attempt to stop the flooding. Hunter has to make the call of sealing off the room. The sacrifice of these 2 men may have saved lives of the entire crew, but the crew still could have died if control was not restored. Conflict number 4 is when Ramsey rallies crew members to reestablish himself as captain so he can launch the missile and become a war hero. Mutiny on mutiny. In doing this, the men he uses force with to bodily harm and death of overpowering the crew and Hunter. He is forceful and tries to use power to influence others in siding with his decision. The same conflict results in Hunter trying to persuade the crew in making the right decision by waiting for the transmitted message to be recovered. Ramsey does agree to give Hunter a chance, but time sensitive, or the missile will be launched. This was mutually agreed upon. In the waiting period, a small but important conflict arises. Ramsey mentions a horse, which is a hobby of Hunter's. Ramsey states that this particular horse is born in Portugal and is only white, but is the most powerfully trained horse in the world. Hunter stands to correct him by saying that the horses are born in Spain and they're born black at birth. Ramsey says, I didn't know that. Born black at birth, huh? But they are from Portugal. Ramsey pokes at Hunter in a few different ways here. One being that Hunter is wrong about horses, which is a hobby of his, so he's got to be wrong about not launching the missile. He also attempts to provoke a racial phrase that white is the most powerful and highly trained race, and Mr. Hunter is a black man. Prior to this incident, Ramsey had thrown a couple punches at Hunter, and Hunter never budged and never showed any disrespect. Circling back to the main conflict of the film, which was between Ramsey and Hunter's difficult decision on whether a nuclear missile should be launched or not. Ramsey is a longtime member of armed forces. He reacts based on tight situations and is very adamant about launching the missile to fulfill his duty in protecting the country and his people. On the other hand, Hunter does not disagree that the missile being launched is incorrect, but we don't know the full transmission because the authentication was incomplete. The argument becomes the difference of saving lives or killing lives. If no attack is done, the United States may further undergo war and take on catastrophic losses. If the attack is executed, then it could save the country and more damage, protecting the world from further attacks. This is what Ramsey's thinking is in launching the missile, and that full authentication is not required in this situation of war because there are lives involved. Hunter advises on the same concepts, but also brings attention to launching when the message is to fall back. This results in killing many innocent lives and initiates war when it could have been avoided. Earlier in the movie, he and Ramsey talked about war and that nuclear war is the worst enemy. Hunter states, "In my humble opinion, sir, in the nuclear world, the true enemy itself is war." They discuss that war was used to help resolve extreme political differences at the risk of lives. "Lives are irreplaceable and more valuable than anything in this world," says Hunter. Hunter tries to make reason of the situation that whatever is done cannot be undone, and that the importance of getting this right could be preventing World War III. Reviewing the negotiation tactics used by both Ramsey and Hunter, we see many different approaches. Ramsey had more incorrect methods used than Hunter, but both share some pros and cons. Ramsey used his power of rank and position to try and persuade or influence his peers. He uses phrases such as, "I am the captain of this ship," and "I am your commanding officer," in a yelling, intimidating voice. He tried to create fear in his crew members. He rallied in his experienced and tenured members that he had spent many years with to retake the ship over so he could launch the missile after he was escorted and locked into his room. He was threatening man's lives to follow his word or they were wrong. Ramsey did have many experienced years over Hunter, which did show some great leadership styles and his ability to make decisions quickly. While his decision was rash and unthoughtful, the position he and the crew were in was not ideal, and he had lived up to the title of being a leader. Hunter was somewhat opposite in the negotiation tactics. He used rationalism by explaining himself and why he thought he had to make the decision to not launch the missile. He incorporated logical details to what happens if we make the wrong decision, and not necessarily the right one. When the technician was fixing the transmitter, Hunter had put the pressure on him to fix it fast. This was because this was time sensitive, and if we didn't get the transmission completed, we could potentially launch the missile incorrectly. He did this in a very reasonable way without yelling, but rather stating that the technician could be the hero. Hunter also stated that the protocol of authentication and regulations of the Navy Code that everyone swore into when they were arguing with Ramsey. When Hunter did this, he also allowed the rest of the crew to understand why Ramsey was incorrect in making the decision without authentication. Both Ramsey and Hunter were making decisions based on the greater good. However, both sides had different greater goods. Ramsey had a love for his crew and his country. Hunter had a love for his crew and country, but also for the enemy. At the end of the movie, both officers had met in front of the Naval Board to go over the situation. Ramsey was asked to retire respectfully, and at the request of him, to have Hunter take over the submarine and be the captain. The board director stated, "You were both right, and you were both wrong. Each acted in the best interest of the United States, and truth be told, both parties won in this negotiation at the conclusion of the right decision being made. This was a win-win situation, but it could have been. Never once did either Ramsey or Hunter disrespect one another, which was the ultimate glue of this conflict. In fact, as the movie ends, Ramsey says to Hunter, 'You were right. The horses are from Spain, Mr. Hunter.'" Thank you for joining and listening on my presentation of Crimson Tide and the negotiation tactics used during the conflicts of the film. I do highly encourage everyone to watch this movie. It is wonderful and displays many different leadership styles and negotiation tactics. This is a film that I truly enjoyed, and I hope you would as well. Thank you.